I still see it when I close my eyes. The woman in the blue Toyota crossing the intersection. The skid of my USPS truck tires against wet asphalt. The horrific sound of metal crumpling and glass shattering. The bright Arizona sun reflecting off her blood as it pooled beside her crumpled body. The way her eyes, vacant and accusatory, stared up at me as I knelt beside her, frantically apologizing to someone who would never hear me again. Jennifer Sandoval, 32nd, mother of 2, wife to Miguel, dental hygienist at Chandler Family Dental. I memorized everything about her after the accident. Some pathetic attempt at penance, I guess. The Phoenix postmaster called it momentary inattention. The police report said I had the right of way, but she misjudged the turn. Her family's wrongful death lawsuit disagreed. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I was just thinking about my divorce papers sitting unsigned on my kitchen counter, wondering if Emily would fight me for custody of our dog. Just a split second of distraction, and someone died. They couldn't fire me outright, union protections and all that, but everyone knew I had to go. Too much negative publicity. Too many angry phone calls from the Sandoval family's supporters. So they transferred me to Window Rock Post Office in the Navajo Nation, about as far from Phoenix as you could get while still being in Arizona. A demotion disguised as a fresh start. Window Rock is a small town, the administrative capital of the Navajo Nation, but not exactly bustling. Red sandstone formations surrounding modest government buildings. The iconic stone arch that gives the town its name. A place where everyone knows each other, and I knew no one. My studio apartment sits above the only laundromat in town, an ancient rattling machine currently shaking my floorboards at 11 p.m. as I write this. The space is barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette that consists of a mini fridge, microwave, and a hot plate. But the rent is cheap, and the owner, Mrs. B. Gay, doesn't ask questions about why a 38-year-old white male carrier suddenly moved here from Phoenix. The post office is housed in a squat, sandstone-colored building that stands beside the chapter house. It serves not just Window Rock, but several surrounding communities: Fort Defiance, St. Michael's, Oak Springs. We're chronically understaffed, which means long hours sorting mail and covering extra routes. That's how I found myself alone in the back room that first Friday night, 3 weeks after moving here. Elmer, the postmaster, a leathery Navajo man in his 60s, had warned me never to work alone after sunset. I thought it was about safety in an unfamiliar area. I wish to God that's all it had been. Hello, viewers. If you wish your stories or experiences to be narrated by me, share them on our own subreddit, which you can join from the description below. I will pick the stories from the community and narrate them, and every once in a while, we will host a 3-hour story compilation. There were 5 letters in the late arrival bin. No return addresses, no destination addresses either. Just blank cream-colored envelopes with a strange rust-colored symbol where the stamp should have been. I'd never seen anything like it. A spiral with what looked like tiny hoof prints embedded in the coils. I was reaching to set them aside for Elmer when I noticed a yellow post-it note stuck to the inside of the bin. The handwriting was cramped, hurried. 8 rules for nameless letters. 1. Never open them. 2. Never destroy them. 3. Always wear gloves when touching them. 4. Never take them home. 5. Place them in the red box under counter by midnight. 6. Never read Rule 8 before Rule 7. 7. If a letter speaks your name, run. Don't look back. 8. If you've broken Rule 6, pray to whatever God you believe in. You have 24 hours. I laughed. Had to be Ronnie. the newest hire besides me, pulling some kind of prank on the new guy. But as I picked up the first letter with my bare fingers, the paper felt wrong, too warm, almost like skin. And then I heard it, a faint, dry whisper from inside the sealed envelope. Daniel. I dropped the letter like it had burned me. My heart slammed against my ribs as I staggered backward, knocking over a cart of outgoing packages. No way. No fucking way did I just hear my name whispered from inside a sealed envelope. Hello? My voice echoed in the empty sorting room. The fluorescent light above me buzzed, then flickered. The building was silent except for the distant hum of the highway and the rhythmic thunk of the ancient air conditioner struggling against the desert heat. I waited, listening for the voice again, but there was nothing. Just my imagination, I told myself. Stress and guilt messing with my head. Then I remembered Rule 7. If a letter speaks your name, run. Don't look back. I wasn't about to sprint out of the building over some stupid joke, but I couldn't shake the uneasiness crawling up my spine. I glanced at the clock. 11:28 p.m. Rule 5 said to place the letters in the red box under the counter by midnight. Was that part of the prank too? I grabbed a pair of latex gloves from the supply drawer. Might as well follow Rule 3 just in case, and cautiously picked up the letters again. No whispers this time. They felt normal now, just paper. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. The front counter had several boxes underneath for different types of mail sorting, but none were red. I checked twice, then a third time, getting more frustrated. Great prank, Ronnie. As I turned to head back to the sorting room, I noticed a small door in the wall behind the counter, painted the same beige as everything else. I'd never seen it before, despite working here for 3 weeks. It was about a foot square, like a small access panel, with no handle, just a tiny keyhole. I knelt down to examine it, running my gloved fingers along the seam. The door swung open at my touch, revealing a small compartment with a weathered wooden box inside. The box was painted a dark, flaking red, like old blood. I hesitated, then placed all 5 letters inside the box. As I closed the little door, I heard a soft click, like a lock engaging. When I tried to open it again, it wouldn't budge. What the hell is going on here? I muttered, getting to my feet. You found them then. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Elmer stood in the doorway, his face half in shadow. I hadn't heard him come in. Jesus Christ, Elmer. You scared the shit out of me. He didn't smile. You touched them with your bare hands, didn't you? A chill ran through me. How did you? I can see it on your face. He shook his head, disappointment etched in the deep lines around his mouth. Did you read all the rules? Yeah. It was a cute prank. The whispering envelope was a nice touch. Did Ronnie set this up? Elmer's expression didn't change. This isn't a joke, Daniel. Come on. Letters that whisper. Secret red boxes. Pray to whatever God you believe in. It's obviously... Did one of them speak to you? He cut in, his voice sharp. I swallowed hard. I thought I heard something. But that's impossible. Elmer sighed heavily and limped over to the coffee machine. He poured himself a cup of the sludge that had been sitting there since morning, then gestured for me to sit. The Navajo call them Walachi Binal Tsus, letters from the darkness. He took a sip of coffee and grimaced. They've been coming to this post office for as long as anyone can remember. Nobody knows where they come from or how they get here. That's crazy? Maybe, but you heard one speak. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. What did it say? My name, I admitted reluctantly. Just my name. Elmer nodded gravely. It knows you now. You broke rules 3 and 7 in one go. This is ridiculous, I said, standing up. I'm going home. No. Elmer grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. You need to stay here tonight. Breaking Rule 7 means it's hunting you now. What's hunting me? Whatever was inside that envelope. He released my wrist. The letters are just vessels. Containers. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. For what? The old people call them chihidi, evil spirits. But I think they're something else. Something older. Elmer's eyes were deadly serious. Listen to me, Daniel. Go to the supply closet. There's a cot in there. Lock yourself in and don't come out until sunrise. Don't go home tonight. You can't seriously expect me to. Do you want to end up like Charlie? Elmer snapped. Who's Charlie? The carrier you replaced. Official story is he quit, moved to California. Elmer's voice dropped. Truth is, he broke the rules. Took one of those letters home. We found pieces of him scattered across 3 counties. My stomach lurched. That's not funny. Wasn't meant to be. Elmer stood up. There's food and water in the closet. Stay until dawn. I'll come back with something that might help. This is insane, I protested. But a part of me, the part that had heard my name whispered from a sealed envelope, was terrified. One more thing, Elmer said as he reached the door. If you hear knocking tonight, no matter what voices you hear, no matter what they promise you, don't open the door. He left before I could respond, the bell above the post office door jingling cheerfully as it closed behind him. I stood there for a long moment, torn between rational disbelief and primitive fear. Then I heard it. Soft at first, then growing louder. Scratching. Coming from inside the wall where I'd placed the red box. Like fingernails dragging slowly across paper. And beneath the scratching, a whisper. Daniel. I know where you live, Daniel. I slept in the supply closet that night. I woke with a stiff neck and the taste of fear still sour in my mouth. Sunlight filtered through the small window of the supply closet, casting a square of gold across the industrial carpet. My phone read 6:07 a.m. I'd survived the night. The memory of that whisper. Daniel. I know where you live, Daniel. Made my skin crawl even in the safety of daylight. I hadn't slept well, jolting awake at every creak and groan of the old building settling. Twice I'd heard scratching at the closet door. Once, around 3 a.m., I'd heard what sounded like my ex-wife Emily calling my name from the hallway, begging me to let her in. I knew it couldn't be her. Emily was in Phoenix, probably sleeping soundly beside her new boyfriend, Kyle the chiropractor. But the voice had been so convincing that I'd almost unlocked the door. Almost. When I finally emerged from the closet, the post office was quiet and normal. Morning light streamed through the windows, dust motes dancing in the golden beams. No scratch marks on the walls. No evidence of anything supernatural. Just a regular small-town post office preparing for the day. I splashed cold water on my face in the employee bathroom and stared at my reflection, dark circles under my eyes. 3-day stubble. I looked like shit. Rough night? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Rami had appeared in the doorway, a lanky Navajo kid barely out of his teens, with a wispy attempt at a mustache and the kind of easy smile that said he'd never accidentally killed anyone. You could say that, I muttered, drying my hands. Hey, what do you know about those letters? The ones with no addresses? His smile faltered slightly. Elmer told me not to talk about that stuff with you until you'd been here longer. So you do know about them? Ronnie shrugged uncomfortably. Everyone who works here knows. It's part of the job. And you never thought to warn me? Elmer said it was better if you found out on your own. Said some people don't believe it until they experience it themselves. He hesitated. Did you see something last night? Before I could answer, the front bell jingled, and I heard Elmer's familiar, uneven gait. He appeared in the bathroom doorway, holding a paper bag from Dene Restaurant, the small diner across from the Window Rock Tribal Park. "Breakfast," he said, handing me the bag. "You look like hell." "Thanks," I said dryly, peering inside. "A breakfast burrito and coffee." My stomach growled. Elmer turned to Ronnie. "Go help Mrs. Sosi with her packages. She's waiting at the counter." Once Ronnie was gone, Elmer's demeanor changed. "You stayed the night. Good." Not like I had much choice after that, that thing whispered to me. I unwrapped the burrito and took a bite, suddenly ravenous. "What the hell is going on, Elmer?" "No more cryptic bullshit. I want the truth." Elmer sighed and leaned against the sink. "The truth is complicated. Those letters have been coming here for generations. My father was postmaster before me, and his father before him. They taught me the rules." "But what are they? Where do they come from?" "Nobody knows for sure. The Navajo have stories about skinwalkers." "Those are just legends," I interrupted. Elmer gave me a withering look. "All legends start somewhere, Daniel." The letters started appearing in the 1920s, not long after oil was discovered on Navajo land. Some say they're a curse from disturbing sacred ground. Others think they're messages from the Dine ancestors, warnings about the outside world. But you don't believe either of those explanations. He shook his head. "I think they're from somewhere, in between. Not our world, but not completely separate either. A place that touches ours at certain points." He paused. "I served in Vietnam. Saw things there I couldn't explain either. There are thin places in the world. Cracks." I finished the burrito trying to process this. "So these letters come through some kind of crack in reality?" "That's insane." "Maybe. But you heard it speak. Would you have believed that was possible before last night?" He had me there. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "Now we need to protect you. You broke rules 3 and 7. You touched a letter with your bare hands, and it spoke your name." Elmer reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch on a cord. "My grandmother made this. It's a medicine bag. Protection." I took it reluctantly. It smelled of sage and something earthier. "Wear it," Elmer instructed. "Don't take it off, especially at night. And there are more rules you need to know. Rules that aren't written down." "More rules." "Great. Rule 9. Never look directly at the letters after sunset. Rule 10. If you find one outside the post office, don't touch it, even with gloves. Mark the location and tell me immediately. Rule 11. If you dream about opening a letter, wake yourself up any way you can." I slipped the medicine bag over my neck. "This is crazy." "Crazy or not, it's real, and it's hunting you now." Elmer's face was grave. "That thing knows your name, knows your scent. It'll try to lure you. It'll wear familiar faces, use familiar voices." "Like my ex-wife," I murmured, remembering the voice at the door. Elmer nodded. "Exactly. It'll find what you want, what you fear, and use it against you. How do I stop it? You don't. You survive it." He checked his watch. "The good news is, if you make it through 3 days, it usually gives up and returns to the letter. Goes dormant." "Usually?" Elmer didn't answer, which wasn't reassuring. "What about Charlie?" I asked. "You said he took a letter home." "That was different, worse. He opened it." Elmer's eyes clouded with memory. "Never open them, Daniel. No matter what." Death would be a mercy compared to what happened to Charlie. The front bell jingled again, signaling a customer. Elmer straightened up. "We'll talk more later. For now, stay busy. Sort the regular mail. Don't go near the back room alone. And whatever you do, don't go home tonight either. It'll be waiting for you there." "Where am I supposed to sleep? The closet again?" "My house. It's protected. I'll drive you after we close." Throughout the day, I tried to focus on normal tasks, sorting mail, helping customers, loading my truck for deliveries, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I passed the small door where I'd placed the red box, I swore I could hear faint scratching from inside the wall. My route took me through the residential areas of Window Rock and into the neighboring community of St. Michael's. The familiar routine should have been comforting, but every house I approached looked like a potential trap. Every person I passed on the street could be something else wearing their skin. Paranoia crept in like poison. At one house, a small stucco bungalow on Mesa View Drive, a familiar blue Toyota was parked in the driveway. My blood froze. It looked exactly like Jennifer Sandoval's car, the one I'd hit in Phoenix. Same dent in the passenger door, same University of Arizona sticker on the back window. But that was impossible. Her car had been destroyed in the accident. I'd seen it crushed beyond recognition. As I approached with a package, the front door opened. A woman stepped out. For one horrible moment, I thought it was Jennifer. Same dark hair, same height. But when she turned, it was a stranger's face. "Are you okay?" she asked, frowning at what must have been my ghost-white expression. "Fine," I managed. "Just the heat." As I handed her the package, I noticed something tucked into the side of her mailbox. A cream-colored envelope with no address, no stamp. Just that strange, rust-colored spiral symbol. Rule 10. If you find one outside the post office, don't touch it, even with gloves. Mark the location and tell me immediately. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "did you put that envelope in your mailbox?" She looked where I was pointing and frowned. What envelope? It was right there, plain as day, but she couldn't see it. "Never mind," I said, backing away. "Have a nice day." I finished my route in record time and returned to the post office. Elmer was at the counter, helping an elderly Navajo woman with a money order. When he finished, I pulled him aside and told him about the letter at the house on Mesa View. His face drained of color. "It's escalating faster than I thought. It's already hunting actively." "What do we do?" "We'll go back after closing. We need to contain it before nightfall." He gripped my shoulder. "Don't worry. We've dealt with this before." But the tremor in his voice told me that whatever was happening wasn't normal. Even by the twisted standards of Wolachi Binaltsuz, something was different this time. Something was worse. The sun was already slipping behind the red sandstone formations when Elmer and I pulled up to the house on Mesa View Drive in his ancient Ford pickup. The temperature was dropping rapidly as it always did in the desert after sunset, the heat of the day surrendering to the chill of night. "Remember," Elmer said as we got out, "don't touch it. Don't even look directly at it. I'll handle everything." He reached into the truck bed and pulled out what looked like an old leather doctor's bag, weathered and cracked with age. From it, he produced a pair of silver tongs, a small clay jar with symbols etched into its surface, and a bundle of dried herbs. "What's all that?" I asked. "Tools," he replied simply. "Stay behind me." We approached the mailbox cautiously. The house was dark, the owner apparently not home. The envelope was still there, wedged into the side of the box, its cream-colored surface almost luminous in the fading light. Elmer muttered something in Navajo, then carefully grasped the envelope with the silver tongs. As he lifted it, I swore I could hear a faint, angry hissing sound coming from within the sealed paper. "Is it alive?" I whispered. "In a way." Elmer carefully lowered the envelope into the clay jar and sealed it with a cork stopper. "Think of it like an egg. What's inside is still developing." "Developing into what?" He didn't answer, just tucked the jar into his bag and lit the bundle of herbs with a lighter. The sharp, cleansing scent of burning sage filled the air as he wafted the smoke around the mailbox and then around both of us. "To mask our scent," he explained, "and to cleanse the space it occupied. These things leave residue." On the drive back to the post office, Elmer explained more about the letters and the rules that governed them. "The rules aren't arbitrary," he said, eyes fixed on the darkening road ahead. "They're like instructions for handling dangerous materials. Each one exists because someone, somewhere, discovered what happens when you don't follow it." "Who made these rules?" I asked. "My grandfather used to say they came from a postmaster back in the 1920s. Guy named Frederick Atwood. White man, like you. Story goes that he received the first letter, broke every possible rule, and somehow survived to write down what he learned." Elmer's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Most of him survived anyway." I swallowed hard. "And these things inside the letters, what do they want? To exist in our world, to feed, to replace." He glanced at me. "They're parasites, Daniel. They need hosts." We pulled into the post office parking lot. The building looked different at night, darker, more forbidding, its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the darkness. "I need to secure this one in the red box," Elmer said, holding up the clay jar. "Then we'll go to my place. It's not safe for you here anymore." Inside, the post office was silent and dark. Elmer switched on only a single light in the back room, keeping the main area dim. He limped over to the small door behind the counter, the one that had concealed the red box, and produced an old iron key from around his neck. "Stand back," he warned. When he opened the little door, the smell hit me immediately, like rotten meat and burned hair. The red box glowed faintly within the compartment, pulsing like a heart. The scratching sound I'd heard the night before was louder now, more frantic. Elmer quickly opened the jar, used the tongs to transfer the letter into the box, and slammed the door shut. He locked it with the iron key, then pressed his palm against the wood, whispering something in Navajo. The scratching stopped abruptly. "That should hold it," he said, turning to me. "Let's go before—" The phone rang, cutting him off mid-sentence. Not his cell phone, but the ancient landline on the counter. It rang 3 times before falling silent. Elmer and I exchanged glances. "Nobody calls that line after hours," he said quietly. The phone rang again. 3 rings, then silence. "Don't answer it," Elmer warned. On the 3rd set of rings, something compelled me to move toward the phone. It was like my body was acting without my permission, drawn by some unseen force. "Daniel, no!" Elmer lunged for me, but too late. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. "Hello?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. At first, there was only silence, then a soft shuffling sound, like paper being folded and unfolded. Then a voice spoke. Not the whisper from the envelope, but Jennifer Sandoval's voice, the woman I'd killed in Phoenix. "Daniel," she said, her words slurred and wet, as if speaking through a mouthful of blood. "Why did you leave me there? I'm still waiting for help." My knees nearly buckled. "This isn't real," I whispered. "I can see you, Daniel. I'm watching you right now, through the windows, through the cracks in the wall, through the seams in the envelopes." Elmer ripped the phone from my hand and slammed it down. "It's found a way to reach you," he said urgently. "We need to leave. Now." but I couldn't move, because I'd seen something in the darkened window behind the counter, a face pressed against the glass. Jennifer's face, horribly mangled, skull partly crushed just as it had been in the accident. Her flattened lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. "Daniel." Elmer shook me. "Don't look at it. That's not really her. It's using your guilt to get to you." The lights flickered, then went out completely. In the sudden darkness, I heard something scraping against the outside of the building, not just from one direction, but from all around us, as if dozens of hands were clawing at the walls. "The emergency exit," Elmer hissed, pulling me toward the back. "We need to get to my truck." We fumbled through the darkness, Elmer leading the way with the small flashlight from his keychain. The scratching sounds followed us, moving along the walls as we moved. Something was tracking our progress from outside. At the emergency exit, Elmer paused. "When I open this door, we run straight to the truck. Don't stop. Don't look back, no matter what you hear or see. Understand?" I nodded, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. He pushed the door open, and we bolted into the night. The parking lot was eerily silent, the security lights off. The only illumination came from the distant streetlights and the stars overhead. We were halfway to the truck when I heard Jennifer's voice again, this time from behind us. "Daniel, please help me. I'm hurt bad." Against every instinct of self-preservation, I glanced back. Jennifer, or the thing wearing her appearance, stood in the middle of the parking lot. In the dim light, she looked almost normal, except for the impossible angle of her neck and the dark stain spreading across her blouse. She stretched out a hand toward me, pleading, "It hurts so much, Daniel. You did this to me. The least you could do is help." I faltered, my steps slowing. "Don't listen," Elmer shouted, grabbing my arm. "It's not her." As if triggered by his words, Jennifer's form changed. Her limbs elongated unnaturally, joints bending backward. Her face split into a wide, tooth-filled grin that extended past her ears. And from her ruined chest, something began to emerge, cream-colored and folded, like paper unfolding itself. Elmer shoved me toward the truck. "Run!" I ran, fumbling with the passenger door as Elmer scrambled into the driver's seat. The thing that had been Jennifer was moving toward us with a jerky, paper-like rustling sound, still calling my name in that horrible, wet voice. Elmer gunned the engine, and we peeled out of the parking lot, just as the creature reached for the truck. In the rearview mirror, I saw it standing in the middle of the road, its form rippling and changing until it was no longer recognizable as human. Just a twisted mass of paper and darkness. What the fuck was that? I gasped when I could finally speak again. "That," Elmer said grimly, "is what happens when a letter gets a name and finds a form. It's why Rule 7 exists. When it speaks your name, it creates a connection to you. When you acknowledge it, you strengthen that connection. And now? Now it's fully manifested and hunting you actively." He took a sharp turn onto the highway heading north out of Window Rock. "We're going to my place in Oak Springs. It's about 20 minutes from here. I've got protections there." "Protections?" Like the medicine bag? I touched the pouch still hanging around my neck. "Stronger. My house has been prepared for this kind of thing." He gave me a sideways glance. "This isn't the first time a carrier has broken the rules, Daniel. But it's the first time I've seen one of them manifest so quickly and powerfully." "Why is it different this time?" Elmer was quiet for a moment. "I think it's because of your guilt. Your connection to that woman you killed. It's using that. Feeding on it." The words hit me like a physical blow. Of course, it made a sick kind of sense. My guilt over Jennifer's death was an open wound, and this thing had found it, was exploiting it. "There's something else you should know," Elmer said as we turned onto a dirt road leading into the foothills. "Breaking Rule 7 isn't the only rule you've broken." "What do you mean?" "I didn't destroy any letters or take them home." "Rule 6, he reminded me. "Never read Rule 8 before Rule 7. "You read all the rules at once, didn't you?" A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Yeah, I did. So what?" "So you've also triggered Rule 8. If you've broken Rule 6, pray to whatever God you believe in. You have 24 hours. 24 hours until what?" Elmer's face was grim in the dashboard light. "Until it can take your form completely. Until it can replace you." The headlights illuminated a small house ahead, built of traditional stone and wood, nestled against the side of a rocky hill. A fence of juniper branches surrounded the property, marked with small clay figures at regular intervals. "We're here," Elmer said, pulling up to the gate. "My home is protected by old ways. The thing can't cross the boundary." As we got out of the truck, I looked back down the road we'd traveled. In the moonlight, I could see a figure in the distance, standing motionless, watching us, waiting, and I knew with cold certainty that it would be waiting for me tomorrow and the day after that, for as long as it took, until one of us ceased to exist. Elmer's house smelled of cedar, sage, and decades of wood smoke. The interior was a blend of traditional Navajo elements and modern necessities, hand-woven rugs on hardwood floors, family photos alongside ancient-looking ceremonial items. A fire burned in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "My wife passed 5 years ago," Elmer explained, noticing my glance at a photo of a smiling Navajo woman. "Cancer, but her protections remain. She was a medicine woman, knew the old ways better than anyone." He guided me to a small guest room with a narrow bed. "You'll sleep here tonight. Don't cross the threshold after I seal it, no matter what you hear." "Seal it? How?" In response, Elmer produced a small leather pouch from a cabinet. He sprinkled a line of what looked like cornmeal mixed with herbs across the doorway, then placed small polished stones at each corner of the room. "The cornmeal boundary keeps it out. The stones anchor the protection." He handed me a small clay cup of bitter-smelling tea. "Drink this. It will help mask your presence." I hesitated, then drank it down in one gulp, trying not to gag at the taste. "What now?" "We just wait out the 24 hours. Elmer shook his head. "Not that simple. The 24 hours is just when it gains the ability to fully take your form, but it's already hunting you, and it won't stop. We need a more permanent solution." "Which is?" "There's a way to sever the connection, a ritual." Elmer sat heavily on a wooden chair, his face suddenly looking every one of his 60-plus years. "But it requires going back to the post office, to the source." "The red box?" "Yes. The box is a doorway of sorts, a boundary point between worlds. The letters come through it, and they can be sent back through it with the right ritual." I paced the small room, my mind racing. "So tomorrow we go back, do this ritual, and send the thing back where it came from?" "It's not that easy. The ritual requires someone who knows the true names of the spirits. My wife knew them." "I don't." He rubbed his tired eyes. "But I know someone who might. A Hatali, a medicine man, named Thomas Begay. Lives about an hour from here, near Canyon de Chelly. We'll visit him tomorrow." "Will I make it that long?" "This thing seems pretty determined. The protections here will hold through the night. And the medicine bag I gave you helps when you're beyond the boundaries." Elmer stood with a grimace, his bad leg clearly paining him. "Try to sleep. We leave at first light." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, too wired to sleep despite my exhaustion. The events of the past 24 hours replayed in my mind like a horror movie I couldn't shut off. Letters that whispered, rules written on post-it notes, Jennifer's mangled form in the parking lot, and underneath it all, that nagging voice reminding me that I deserved this, that Jennifer Sandoval was dead because of me, that maybe this was justice, cosmic retribution for a life I'd carelessly taken. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke suddenly to a sound outside my window, a light tapping like fingernails on glass. The room was dark except for moonlight filtering through the curtains. According to my phone, it was 3:14 a.m. The tapping came again, more insistent. Against my better judgment, I crept to the window and peered through a gap in the curtains. Jennifer stood outside, looking exactly as she had in life. No injuries, no impossible angles to her limbs. Just a normal woman in a blue blouse, her dark hair lifting slightly in the night breeze. "Daniel?" she called softly, her voice clear even through the glass. "Please, I just want to talk." I knew it wasn't really her. I knew it was the thing from the letter. But seeing her whole and alive sent a pang of longing through me, a wish that I could turn back time, that I could undo what I'd done. "You can't come in," I said, my voice shaking. "There are protections." She smiled sadly. "I know. I can't cross the boundary. But you can come out. Just for a minute. Don't you want a chance to apologize? To make things right?" God help me, I did. The guilt that had been eating at me since the accident surged forward, almost overwhelming in its intensity. "It wasn't your fault, you know," she continued, her voice gentle. "I was texting, not looking where I was going. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." My breath caught. I hadn't known that detail, that she'd been texting. It hadn't been in the police report or the news stories. Could this really be her spirit, seeking closure? "How do I know you're telling the truth?" I asked, pressing my palm against the cool glass. "Come outside. Just across the line. I'll show you my phone. You'll see the text I was writing when it happened." She held up a cell phone, its screen glowing in the darkness. "Just step across." Just for a moment. I found myself moving toward the door of the room, drawn by her words, by the possibility of absolution. My hand was on the doorknob when I remembered Elmer's warning. "Don't cross the threshold after I seal it, no matter what you hear." I froze, torn between desperate hope and survival instinct. "Daniel." Her voice had changed slightly, a hint of impatience creeping in. "Don't you want forgiveness?" "More than anything," I whispered. "Then come outside, right now." The gentle tone was gone completely now, replaced by something harder, demanding. I stepped back from the door. "Number, you're not her." A hiss of frustration came from outside, followed by a sound like paper tearing. When I looked back at the window, Jennifer was gone. In her place was something else, a figure composed of folded paper and darkness, its form constantly shifting and reforming. It pressed against the window, its surface rippling where it made contact with the glass. Though it had no face, I could feel it watching me, its hatred palpable even through the protective barrier. Then it began to change again, morphing into a new shape. My breath caught as I recognized the emerging form, my own face, my own body, rendered in perfect detail. It was like looking into a mirror, except for the eyes, which remained black, empty voids. It pressed my face, its face, against the glass and smiled a smile I'd never worn, too wide and filled with too many teeth. "Soon," it mouthed silently, then turned and walked away into the darkness. I sat awake for the rest of the night, back pressed against the wall, eyes fixed on the door and window. The line of cornmeal glowed faintly in the darkness, a thin barrier between me and oblivion. Dawn came slowly, the sky outside my window shifting from black to indigo to pale gold. When I heard Elmer's uneven footsteps in the hallway, I nearly wept with relief. "It came last night," I told him as he entered, carefully stepping over the cornmeal line. "It looked like Jennifer at first, then it looked like me." Elmer nodded grimly. "The transformation has begun. It's learned your shape. Once the 24 hours are up, it'll be able to hold that form indefinitely." He handed me a mug of coffee. "Did you cross the boundary?" "Number, but I wanted to." I took a sip of the coffee, grateful for its normalcy, its warmth. It offered me forgiveness, said it wasn't my fault. "They're clever," Elmer said. "They find the cracks in your soul and widen them, exploit your deepest needs." He glanced at his watch. "It's been almost 15 hours since you broke Rule 7. We have 9 hours left before it can fully take your form." "What happens then? If it becomes me?" "It replaces you, takes your life, your identity. And no one notices the difference except that people around the replacement tend to suffer misfortunes, accidents, illnesses." His eyes were haunted. "My uncle was replaced when I was a boy. Within a year, 3 family members were dead, and 2 more were gravely ill. We didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. How do you kill these things? You don't. They're not alive in the way we understand life. You can only send them back." He tossed me a clean shirt from his closet. "Get dressed. We need to reach Thomas Begay before noon." As we drove through the early morning light, the landscape of the Navajo Nation spread out around us, vast, stark, and beautiful. Red rock formations jutted up from the earth like ancient sentinels. Eagles soared on thermals high above. In another context, I might have found it peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, pursued. Every shadow seemed to conceal a paper figure. Every distant shape on the horizon looked like it might be my double, running parallel to our course, waiting for its moment to step into my life. "There's something you're not telling me," I said after we'd been driving in silence for nearly half an hour. Elmer's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you say that?" "Because you're too calm. If these things are as dangerous as you say, if your uncle was replaced and it killed your family, why aren't you more afraid? Why help me at all?" A long silence stretched between us, broken only by the rumble of tires on the rough road. "Because," Elmer finally said, "I've been expecting this for a long time." He gave me a sidelong glance. "The letters don't come randomly, Daniel. They come for a reason." "What reason?" "That," he said, as we turned onto a narrow dirt track leading toward a cluster of traditional Navajo hogans in the distance, "is what we're here to find out." Thomas Begay's home was a blend of traditional and modern, a contemporary house with a hogan beside it for ceremonies. An old blue Chevy pickup sat in the dirt driveway, and several horses grazed in a corral nearby. The place had a feeling of timelessness, as if it existed slightly apart from the world I knew. An elderly Navajo man sat on the porch, his weathered face creased with lines that spoke of both laughter and hardship. Though he must have been in his 80s, his dark eyes were sharp and alert. He watched our approach without surprise, as if he'd been expecting us. "Ya'ate, Thomas," Elmer greeted him in Navajo as we approached. "Ya'ate, Elmer." Thomas's gaze shifted to me, assessing. "This is the one? The carrier who broke the rules?" Elmer nodded. "This is Daniel. The letters are hunting him." Thomas studied me for a long moment, then gestured for us to follow him into the hogan. "Come. We don't have much time." The interior of the hogan was cool and dim, smelling of sweet grass and wood smoke. A small fire burned in a central pit, though it seemed to give off no heat, just light and fragrant smoke that spiraled up toward the smoke hole in the center of the domed ceiling. Various ceremonial items hung from the walls: masks, dried herbs, animal skins, and what looked like very old envelopes pinned to a wooden board. "You've seen it already," Thomas said, gesturing for us to sit on woven mats across from him. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I answered. "It came to Elmer's house last night. It looked like the woman who died because of me. Then it changed, took my form." Thomas nodded, unsurprised. "Walachi Binaltsus, the paper demons, they find the shape that will hurt you most, then the shape that will serve them best." He reached for a wooden box beside him and removed a small leather pouch. "How many rules have you broken?" "2 that I know of. I touched a letter with bare hands, and it spoke my name. And I read Rule 8 before Rule 7. Thomas exchanged a significant look with Elmer, then turned back to me. "The letters come when change is needed, when balance must be restored. They have existed since the first Dine encountered the white man's written words." He opened the pouch and sprinkled a mixture of herbs onto the fire, which flared momentarily. "Tell me about the woman who died." I swallowed hard. "Her name was Jennifer Sandoval. I was driving my mail truck. She pulled out in front of me. I was distracted for just a second. Thinking about my divorce papers, I hit her car. She died at the scene." "And you feel responsible?" "I am responsible." Thomas shook his head slightly. "Guilt is like honey to these beings. Sweet, sticky. It traps you and nourishes them." He looked me directly in the eyes. "The woman was texting, not watching the road. You had the right of way. These are facts, yes?" "Yes, but no buts. A tragedy occurred. 2 lives intersected with poor timing. One ended, one continues, changed forever." His voice was gentle but firm. "The paper demon feeds on your misplaced guilt, makes it grow. The more you blame yourself, the stronger it becomes." "So what do I do? Just stop feeling guilty?" "I can't. Number guilt has its purpose, but there is a difference between responsibility and blame." Thomas rose and went to the wall where the old envelopes were pinned. "These came to my grandfather and his father before him. 7 generations of my family have guided carriers like you." He unpinned one of the yellowed envelopes and brought it over, holding it carefully by the edges. It looked ancient, the paper brittle with age, but I could still make out the same rust-colored spiral symbol where a stamp should have been. This one came in 1918, during the Great Sickness that took many Dine. My grandfather's brother carried the mail then. He broke the rules, just as you did. Thomas's expression grew somber. The paper demon took his form, replaced him. For 3 years, no one knew. Then children began to die. Elders sickened. The land itself seemed to wither wherever he walked. "How did they stop it?" I asked. My grandfather discovered the truth, performed the sending back ceremony. Thomas carefully returned the envelope to its place on the wall. But it required sacrifice. A chill ran through me. What kind of sacrifice? That depends on what has been taken, what has been disturbed. He sat back down across from us. The paper demons come through to our world when something is out of balance, when a debt is owed or a wrong needs righting. They are like antibodies, the universe's response to infection. You're saying I'm an infection. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. I'm saying something in your life has created imbalance. The letters are drawn to that imbalance. He looked to Elmer. You haven't told him everything. Elmer shifted uncomfortably. No. Tell him now. He needs to understand what he faces. Elmer sighed heavily. The postmaster I told you about? Frederick Atwood? He wasn't just any postmaster. He was my grandfather. I blinked in surprise. But you said he was white. He was. My grandmother was Navajo. Their marriage wasn't... accepted back then, by either community. Elmer's eyes drifted to the fire. Frederick discovered the first letters in 1923. He broke every rule, touched them, opened them, took one home. Survived, but not intact. Lost his right leg below the knee. Suddenly, Elmer's limp made more sense. The injury was passed down? I asked incredulously. Not the injury itself, but a mark of it, yes. Every male in my family since has been born with a withered right leg. A reminder. Elmer's voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. Frederick learned the rules the hard way, wrote them down, taught my father, who taught me. But there's more, Thomas prompted. Elmer nodded reluctantly. The letters don't just come to our post office by chance. They come because of my family's connection to them, because of Frederick's debt. What debt? I asked. The land the post office stands on. It was taken from a Navajo family during the forced relocations. My grandfather knew this but said nothing, allowed it to happen. The letters began arriving soon after. Elmer's face was grim. For 3 generations, we've kept them contained, followed the rules, but they keep coming, seeking balance. And now one is hunting me, I said slowly, because I broke the rules. Yes, but there's something else. Elmer hesitated. When a carrier breaks the rules, it's never random. The letters choose. They're drawn to people who have their own imbalances, their own debts. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Jennifer Sandoval. Thomas nodded. The woman's death created a ripple, unfinished business, a family grieving without proper closure. He began mixing various dried herbs and minerals in a small clay bowl. The paper demon has latched onto this. It will use your guilt to replace you, then use your form to create more suffering. How do we stop it? I asked, watching him work. We perform the ceremony, send it back. Thomas looked up at me, his eyes solemn. But there is a price. There's always a price for restoration of balance. What price? That will become clear during the ceremony. He handed the bowl to Elmer. This is for the boundary markings. Mix with water from Canyon to Chelly Spring. To me, he gave a small leather amulet on a cord. Wear this. It will mask your scent from the demon until sunset. Elmer checked his watch. We've been here too long already. It's been almost 18 hours since Daniel broke Rule 7. We have less than 6 hours left. Thomas nodded. Return to the post office. Prepare the circle around the red box using this mixture. I will arrive before sunset to perform the ceremony. His gaze held mine. Whatever happens, Daniel, remember, the demon can only take what you willingly give. Your fear, your guilt, your self-blame, these are gifts to it. As we drove back toward Window Rock, the sky began to darken with storm clouds gathering over the mesas. Lightning flashed in the distance, and the air grew heavy with the promise of rain, unusual for this time of year. The weather's responding to it, Elmer explained, seeing my questioning look. The stronger these things get, the more they affect the physical world. Thomas said there would be a price, I said after a while. For the ceremony. What did he mean? Elmer's hands tightened on the wheel. Balance requires exchange. To send the demon back, something must take its place. What kind of something? It varies. Sometimes an object of significance. Sometimes blood. Sometimes. He trailed off. A sacrifice, I finished for him. Like in the stories, a life for a life. Elmer didn't confirm or deny this, which was answer enough. We were about 20 miles from Window Rock when I noticed a blue Toyota following us. The same model as Jennifer's car. It kept a consistent distance behind us, never quite catching up, but never falling behind either. Elmer, I said. trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't look now, but I think it's following us." Elmer glanced in the rearview mirror, his expression darkening. "It's getting bolder, testing its strength." "What do we do?" "Keep going. The amulet Thomas gave you will shield us until we reach the post office." He pressed the accelerator, and the old pickup lurched forward with surprising speed. But the Toyota matched our pace easily, maintaining that same eerie distance. As we rounded a bend in the road, it suddenly disappeared from view. I twisted in my seat, searching the road behind us. "Where did it go?" I asked. Elmer's only answer was a sharp intake of breath. I turned to follow his gaze and felt my blood freeze. The Toyota was now in front of us, parked sideways across the road about 100 yards ahead, blocking our path. Beside it stood two figures, Jennifer Sandoval on one side and my double on the other. Even from this distance, I could see their unnatural smiles, too wide for human faces. Elmer slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding on the gravel shoulder. "It's stronger than I thought. Much stronger." He threw the truck into reverse. "We can't face it yet, not without Thomas and the ceremony prepared." As he began to back up, turning the wheel to execute a 3-point turn, my doppelganger raised a hand and made a casual flicking gesture. Immediately, the truck's engine died. The headlights flickered and went out. Even Elmer's cell phone sitting on the dashboard went dark. "It's draining the electricity," Elmer muttered, trying frantically to restart the engine. "Technology doesn't work well around these things." Through the windshield, I watched with growing horror as my double began walking toward us, its movements smooth and confident, while Jennifer remained by the car. With each step it took, its form seemed to solidify, becoming more convincingly human. "What's it doing?" I whispered. "Getting stronger, practicing your form." Elmer abandoned the ignition and reached under his seat, pulling out an old revolver. "The bullets won't kill it, but they might slow it down. You can't shoot it. It looks exactly like me." "I know the difference," Elmer said grimly. The thing that wore my face stopped about 50 feet from the truck. It tilted its head, studying us with an expression of curiosity, like a child examining an insect. Then it smiled, that too wide smile with too many teeth, and spoke, though it was too far away for normal speech to carry. I heard its voice as clearly as if it were sitting beside me. "Time's running out, Daniel," it said, its voice a perfect mimicry of mine, except for a subtle paper-like rustling underneath the words. "I can feel your life folding into mine. Your memories, your pain, your guilt. Delicious. Don't listen to it," Elmer warned, raising the revolver. "The old man can't help you," my double continued. "His family's debt isn't your concern, but I can release you from yours. No more guilt, no more pain, just surrender." Before Elmer could fire, the thing made another flicking gesture. The gun flew from his hand, landing somewhere in the scrub beside the road. "Bring me what I want," it said. "The original letter, the one you touched. Bring it to the place where the roads cross, and I will spare those you care about." "What do you mean?" I called, unable to help myself. "What people?" In answer, my double stepped aside, revealing what had been hidden behind it. A small child standing in the road. A little boy, no more than 6 or 7, with Sandoval's eyes and features. "Her son," my double said simply. "Miguel Jr., motherless now, because of you. But I can change that. Bring me the letter, and I will restore what was taken." "Don't believe it," Elmer hissed. "It can't bring back the dead. It's lying." But the sight of the boy, Jennifer's son, looking lost and confused on the empty road, made my heart twist with fresh guilt. What if it wasn't lying? What if there was a way to make things right? As if sensing my thoughts, my double smiled again. "1 hour, Daniel. The crossing of routes 264 and 191. Come alone. Bring the letter. It turned and walked back toward the Toyota, taking the child's hand. Jennifer opened the car door and all three got inside. The moment the car doors closed, our truck's engine roared back to life, the headlights blazing. The Toyota made a U-turn and drove away, quickly disappearing over a rise in the road. "It was manipulating you," Elmer said as we resumed our journey. "That wasn't the woman's real son. Just another shape it's taken." "How can you be sure?" I asked, unable to shake the image of the child's face from my mind. Elmer's expression was grim. "Because these things can't create life. They can only mimic, copy, replace. Whatever it's planning, Daniel, it won't bring peace to anyone. Only more suffering." We drove the rest of the way in tense silence, racing against the darkening sky and the ticking clock. I glanced at my watch. Just over 20 hours since I'd broken Rule 7. Less than 4 hours remained before the transformation would be complete. Less than 4 hours to stop myself from being erased and replaced. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a traitorous thought whispered, maybe that would be justice. A life for a life. Balance restored. The Window Rock post office looked abandoned when we pulled into the parking lot. Storm clouds had turned the afternoon dark as twilight, and a biting wind swirled dust across the asphalt. A paper cup tumbled past like urban tumbleweed. The closed sign hung crooked in the front window. "Where's Ronnie?" I asked as Elmer unlocked the door. "Shouldn't he be working today?" "I called him on the way here. Told him to go home. Better not to have civilians around for this." Elmer's limp was more pronounced as he led the way inside. The less people involved, the better. The interior felt different somehow. Colder, with shadows that seemed too deep for the corners they occupied. The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered overhead as Elmer switched them on, several tubes refusing to light at all. "It's been here," Elmer said quietly. "Changed things already." We moved quickly to the back room. Elmer took out the mixture Thomas had given him, adding water from a small flask. "Canyon de Celli spring water," he explained as he stirred it with his finger. "Sacred to the Diné." He began painting a circle on the floor around the small door that concealed the red box, using his finger to apply the mixture in precise, intricate patterns. I watched, feeling increasingly helpless and out of place in this ancient ritual. "Thomas said I have an imbalance," I said after a while, "that the letters are drawn to it. Is that true for everyone who breaks the rules?" Elmer nodded without looking up from his work. "The letters find those who need correction, people carrying debts, guilt, unfinished business. Like Jennifer Sandoval's death. Yes. But there's more to it than that." He completed the circle and stood carefully, avoiding smudging his work. "Ever wonder why you were transferred here specifically, to this post office, out of all the places they could have sent you?" The question caught me off guard. I assumed it was just remote enough that nobody would complain about me being there. After the accident, I wasn't exactly USPS's favorite employee. There are more remote post offices, places much farther from Phoenix. Elmer wiped his hands on his jeans. "No, Daniel. You were sent here deliberately, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing." "What are you talking about? Who would—" "Your regional manager, Arnold Whitfield." Elmer's eyes met mine. "He's been feeding carriers to this post office for decades. People with problems, debts, guilt." My mind reeled. That's insane. Why would he do that? Because Arnold Whitfield isn't Arnold Whitfield anymore. Elmer's voice was grim. He was replaced nearly 30 years ago. one of the first carriers to break the rules after I became postmaster. I tried to save him, but I was too late. Cold realization washed over me. You're saying my supervisor is one of these paper demons? That he transferred me here on purpose? They're strategic, patient. They place themselves in positions where they can influence the flow of more potential hosts. Elmer checked his watch. Thomas should be here soon. We need to be ready. The implications were staggering. How many others had been sent here over the years? How many had broken the rules, been replaced? Was the entire postal service hierarchy infiltrated with these things? As Elmer prepared other aspects of the ceremony, placing small clay vessels at cardinal points around the circle, lighting bundles of herbs that filled the room with fragrant smoke, I found myself drawn to the front windows. The storm outside had intensified, lightning now flashing constantly, though strangely without thunder. And across the street, barely visible through the gathering darkness, stood my double. It wasn't alone. At least a dozen figures stood with it, arranged in a loose semicircle. Jennifer Sandoval, her son, what looked like her husband, and others I didn't recognize. Some wore postal uniforms. All were perfectly still, watching the post office with unwavering attention. "Elmer," I called, my voice tight. "We have company." He joined me at the window, cursing softly in Navajo when he saw the gathering. "They're trying to intimidate us. Stop the ceremony before it begins. Will they attack?" "Not directly. Not yet. They prefer manipulation to open conflict." He grabbed my arm. "Come away from the windows. Your looking at them gives them strength." As we returned to the back room, the phone at the front counter began to ring. 3 rings, then silence, then 3 more. "Don't answer it," Elmer warned, but I wasn't about to make that mistake again. The windows rattled as the wind outside picked up. Rain began to fall, fat drops striking the glass like thrown pebbles. The smell of ozone filled the air, and the building's old wiring groaned under some unseen strain. The phone rang again. This time a voice followed, audible despite the receiver being untouched on its cradle. "Daniel," my own voice called from the phone. "Think about what you're doing. There's a better way." I flinched but said nothing. "I can make things right," the voice continued. "Jennifer can have her life back. Her family can be whole again. All I need is the original letter, the one you touched." "Don't listen," Elmer said, gripping my shoulder. "It's lying." "Am I?" the voice said, somehow hearing Elmer's words. "Ask him about Charlie. Ask him what really happened to the carrier you replaced." I looked at Elmer, questioning. "It's trying to divide us," he said, but I could see something in his expression, guilt, or at least discomfort. "He didn't just take a letter home," my doppelganger's voice continued. "Tell him the truth, Elmer. Tell him how you sacrificed Charlie to protect yourself." "What's it talking about?" I demanded. Elmer's face had gone ashen. "Charlie broke the rules, yes, but the truth is more complicated." He swallowed hard. He was getting too close to the truth about Whitfield, about the network of replacements. They marked him for replacement. I couldn't save him. The ceremony failed." "Failed?" the voice mocked. "Or you deliberately sabotaged it? One less person who knew your family's secret." "That's not true," Elmer said, but his voice lacked conviction. I stepped away from him, doubt creeping in. "Have you been honest with me about any of this? The rules, the letters, what happens during the ceremony?" "Daniel, there's no time for this. The entity is manipulating you, using your uncertainty against you. Thomas will be here any minute, and we need to..." The lights went out, plunging the post office into near total darkness. Emergency lights kicked on a moment later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "Last chance, Daniel," my voice called from the phone. "Bring me the letter. Let me make things right. Or stay with Elmer and share Charlie's fate." In the sudden quiet after the voice faded, we heard the front door open. Both of us tensed, Elmer reaching for another weapon, a letter opener with symbols carved into its handle. But it was Thomas who stepped into view, soaked from the rain, carrying a worn leather satchel. His eyes took in the scene, the red emergency lighting, our tense postures, the ceremonial circle on the floor. "They're outside," he stated calmly. "Yes," Elmer confirmed. "A dozen at least, and the entity has been speaking to us through the phone." Thomas nodded as if this were expected. It grows stronger as the deadline approaches, and it has gathered others of its kind to witness. He set down his satchel and removed several items: a small drum, a bundle of feathers, a jar of what looked like red ochre, and a very old envelope similar to the ones pinned on his wall. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to the envelope. "Insurance," Thomas replied cryptically. "Now, we must hurry. The boundary between worlds grows thin." He directed us to complete the preparations, Elmer adding the final symbols to the circle, while I placed small candles at specific points Thomas indicated. Outside, the storm intensified, rain now pounding against the roof like thousands of impatient fingers. As we worked, I couldn't shake the entity's accusations about Charlie and Elmer. Was I walking into a trap? Was there truly a way to save Jennifer, to undo the damage I'd caused? Or was it all manipulation, as Elmer claimed? When everything was ready, Thomas turned to me. "The ceremony requires the original letter, the one you touched. It creates the bridge for the entity's return." Elmer moved to the small door behind the counter, produced his iron key, and hesitated. "Once I open this, we must work quickly. The barrier between the red box and our world will be weakened." Thomas nodded and turned to me. "Daniel, understand what we're about to do. The entity that has taken your form is connected to you through the original letter. By returning that letter through the proper ritual, we can send the entity back with it." "And the price?" I asked. "What's the sacrifice?" Thomas's weathered face was solemn in the red light. "That will be revealed during the ceremony itself. But I warn you now, it will ask for something precious, something you value. Are you willing to pay that price?" Before I could answer, a tremendous crash shook the building. Not thunder, but something striking the roof with massive force. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling. "They're growing impatient," Thomas said, unperturbed. "We must begin now." Elmer inserted the key into the small door and turned it. The scratching sound from within intensified immediately, becoming a frenzied scrabbling like dozens of rats trapped in the walls. When he swung the door open, the red box pulsed with an inner light, its surface seemingly alive, rippling like muscle beneath skin. Thomas began to chant in Navajo, beating a slow rhythm on his small drum. The air in the post office grew thick, hard to breathe, charged with something that wasn't quite electricity. The boundaries of the circle Elmer had drawn began to glow with a soft blue light. "The letter?" Thomas prompted. Elmer reached into the red box with a pair of silver tongs, carefully extracting the cream-colored envelope I had touched 3 days ago. It looked innocent enough, just paper, but it moved in the tongs like something alive, twisting and folding as if trying to escape. The moment the letter emerged from the box, every light in the building exploded simultaneously, showering us with glass. The emergency lights failed, leaving only the glow of the circle and the pulsing red illumination from the box. And outside, a familiar voice, my voice, began to wail, rising above the storm in a cry of rage and hunger that made my bones vibrate with its intensity. The hunt had reached its final stage. The entity knew we were trying to send it back, and it was not going quietly. The walls of the post office shuddered as if under assault. Rain lashed horizontally against the windows, which bowed inward with each gust of wind. The temperature plummeted, our breath suddenly visible in clouds of vapor. The only light came from the glowing circle on the floor and the throbbing crimson illumination from the red box. Thomas continued his chant, raising the letter with the silver tongs toward the ceiling, then lowering it to hover just above the center of the circle. The paper writhed more violently now, corners folding and unfolding like an origami creation manipulated by invisible hands. "What now?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. "Hold the letter in the center," Thomas instructed Elmer, handing him the tongs. "Daniel, you must stand at the edge of the circle, facing east." As I moved to the position Thomas indicated, a sound like tearing fabric split the air. The front windows of the post office shattered inward, showering the lobby with glass. Through the now empty frames, I could see the gathering outside had drawn closer, a ring of figures standing in the pouring rain, their forms distorted, rippling like reflections in disturbed water. My doppelganger stood at the center of the group, its shape now fully solidified into a perfect copy of me, except for the eyes, which remained flat and black. It locked its gaze with mine across the distance, and I felt a pressure in my mind, like intrusive fingers sifting through my thoughts. "There are other ways," it projected into my mind. "Better ways, ways without sacrifice." Thomas must have sensed the intrusion. He stepped between me and the window, breaking the eye contact. "Do not engage," he warned. "Its power over you grows with each passing minute." He pressed the small clay jar of red ochre into my hands. "When I give the signal, you must mark yourself with this. A line across your forehead, another across your heart. It creates distinction, separates you from the entity." Elmer stood rigid at the center of the circle, the writhing letter suspended in the tongs above his head. His face was beaded with sweat despite the cold, his arms trembling with the effort of holding the letter steady against its increasing struggles. Thomas began a new chant, louder and more urgent than before. The blue glow of the circle intensified, climbing like ghostly flames around our ankles. The letter in the tongs began to smoke, not burning but releasing thin tendrils of vapor that coiled and twisted in the air above it. Outside, the wailing of my double changed pitch, becoming something between a scream and a hiss. The other figures began to move, circling the building in a slow, synchronized procession. "They're attempting to disrupt the boundary," Thomas explained, between verses of his chant. "Stay focused." The room began to distort subtly around us, corners no longer quite meeting at right angles, distances between objects seeming to compress and expand randomly. The walls themselves appeared to breathe, pulsing inward and outward like the sides of a living creature. "Thomas," Elmer called urgently. "The letter. It's changing." The envelope in the tongs had begun to split open along its seam, not tearing but unfolding itself from within. Something dark and fluid moved inside, visible through the widening gap. Thomas's expression grew grave. "It's trying to emerge fully before we can complete the sending back. Daniel, the ochre, now." With shaking hands, I opened the small jar and dipped my fingers into the red paste inside. I drew a line across my forehead, feeling it burn slightly against my skin, then pulled open my shirt to mark another line across my heart. The moment the second mark was complete, a shock ran through me like an electrical current. I gasped, dropping to one knee as images flooded my mind. Jennifer Sandoval's mangled body on the asphalt, her blood reflecting the phoenix sun, her eyes staring emptily upward. But now I saw it from outside myself, from a perspective that couldn't have been mine. "What's happening to me?" I choked out. "The ochre separates truth from deception," Thomas explained quickly. "You're seeing what really happened, not just your memories of it." The vision continued, and I watched as paramedics arrived at the accident scene, as police took statements. I heard a witness clearly telling an officer, "The woman just pulled out, looking down at her phone. The mail truck had no chance to stop." Then I was in a hospital corridor, watching a doctor speak to a man, Miguel Sandoval, Jennifer's husband. "She was gone instantly," the doctor was saying. "She wouldn't have suffered." Miguel nodded, grief etched in his features, but there was understanding there too, not the blind rage and blame I had imagined all these months. "The lawsuit," I gasped, looking up at Thomas. "Her family sued me." "Did they?" Thomas asked pointedly. "Or is that what you were told? What you believed because it fit your narrative of guilt?" Before I could process this, the letter in Elmer's tongue split open completely. What emerged wasn't paper or ink, but a writhing dark mass that seemed to swallow light. It poured upward, defying gravity, forming a column of darkness that twisted and coiled like smoke, but moved with purpose. Thomas slammed his staff against the floor 3 times, shouting words in Navajo that seemed to hang visible in the air, glowing symbols that orbited the column of darkness. "Now comes the price," he said to me, his voice suddenly gentle despite the chaos surrounding us. "The balance must be restored. The entity requires replacement, something of equal value to what it desires." "My life?" I asked, fear gripping me. "Number not your life." Thomas's eyes were compassionate. "Your guilt, your self-blame, these are what drew it to you, what it feeds upon." The darkness above Elmer had begun to take a more definite shape, a crude approximation of a human form, with limbs of swirling shadow and a head that constantly reshuffled its features between Jennifer's face and my own. "I call upon the ancient agreements," Thomas intoned formally, "the boundaries established between worlds. This one," he pointed at me, "offers release of false blame, surrender of unwarranted guilt, acceptance of the truth." The shadowy figure seemed to consider this, tilting its half-formed head. Outside, my doppelganger pressed its face against the remaining fragments of window glass, its features contorted in fury. "No!" it screamed, the sound piercing my skull like an ice pick. "He is mine! His guilt is mine." Thomas ignored the outburst, focusing on the shadow figure. "The woman died by her own actions. Her family has found peace without vengeance. The debt is imagined, not real." He turned to me. "Daniel, you must speak the truth as you now understand it. Release yourself from the blame you've carried." The words caught in my throat. For months I'd defined myself by that moment of impact, by Jennifer's death. My guilt had become my identity. Surrendering it felt impossible, like cutting away a part of myself. "I can't," I whispered. "You must," Thomas insisted. "It is the only way." The shadow figure drifted closer, its substance seeming to concentrate, becoming more solid. It extended a limb toward me, not threatening, but questioning. In that moment, time seemed to slow. My mind filled with memories, the accident, the transfer, the strange letters, the rules, but also earlier memories, my failed marriage, my childhood, moments of happiness and sorrow that had shaped me. I was more than my guilt. Had always been more. "It wasn't my fault," I said, the words painful to form. "I was driving legally. She pulled out without looking, distracted by her phone. I couldn't have stopped in time. It was a terrible accident." Each word felt like ripping off a bandage, exposing raw skin beneath. But with each admission, something lightened in my chest. I've punished myself for months for something I couldn't have prevented. I continued, stronger now. I've let guilt consume me, define me. I've imagined blame where there was none. The shadow figure recoiled slightly as I spoke, its form becoming less stable, edges fraying. I release this guilt, I said, the words now flowing freely. I accept the truth of what happened. I honor Jennifer Sandoval's memory, not through self-destruction, but through living honestly. As I spoke the final words, the shadow figure convulsed violently. It stretched upward, its substance thinning, then collapsed back toward the letter lying in the circle. Like water being sucked down a drain, the darkness spiraled into the envelope. Outside, my doppelganger let out a shriek of fury and pain. Its perfect copy of my form began to deteriorate, patches of skin flaking away like burnt paper, revealing nothing but emptiness beneath. The other figures surrounding it backed away, their forms similarly destabilizing. "Quickly," Thomas commanded Elmer. "Return the letter to the box." Elmer moved with surprising speed, the letter now limp and ordinary in the tongs. He placed it back into the red box and slammed the small door shut. Thomas rushed forward, pouring a line of some black powder along the door's seam, then setting it alight with a match. It flared brilliant blue, then faded. "Is it over?" I asked, feeling strangely hollow, drained. "Almost," Thomas replied. From his satchel, he withdrew the ancient envelope he'd brought with him, the one he'd called insurance. "This is the final step, the replacement." He handed it to me. It felt ordinary, just old paper, neither warm nor alive. "This letter contains the original rules, written by Frederick Atwood after his encounter," Thomas explained. "It has power of its own, protective power. Place it in the circle." I did as instructed, setting the envelope in the center of the still glowing blue circle. Thomas spoke a few more words in Navajo, and the circle flared once more, then faded completely. The storm outside had ceased abruptly. Through the broken windows, I could see that the gathering of entities had vanished. The parking lot was empty, glistening with rain under the newly emerged moon. "It's done," Thomas said simply. "The entity has been sent back, the connection severed." I felt different, lighter, yet somehow more substantial. The crushing weight of guilt I'd carried for months had lifted, leaving me clear-headed for the first time since the accident. "What was in that envelope?" I asked, nodding toward where Thomas's insurance had been. It had vanished, apparently consumed by the ritual. "A burden voluntarily carried," Thomas replied cryptically. "Frederick Atwood's acknowledgement of his family's debt to the Navajo people. His acceptance of responsibility." He looked at Elmer. "A burden your family has carried for generations and will continue to carry." Elmer nodded solemnly. "Balance must be maintained. The letters will still come, but they won't come for you again," Thomas told me. "You're free of this particular cycle." As we stood in the shattered remains of the post office, glass crunching beneath our feet, I realized I'd gained something unexpected from this terrifying experience. Not just survival, but release, understanding. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Elmer said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We rebuild. We clean up. We continue. And you remember the rules? All of them." I nodded, knowing that while I might be free of the entity's hunt, I was now irrevocably connected to the secret world of the nameless letters. Some knowledge can't be unlearned. Some rules can't be forgotten. And I would never again open an envelope without first checking for a return address. Months have passed since that night at the Window Rock post office. The building has been repaired. New windows installed, walls repainted, floors polished to a shine. To casual observers, there's no evidence of what happened there. No physical evidence anyway. I still work as a mail carrier, still deliver to the same routes through Window Rock, St. Michael's, and the surrounding communities. The residents know me now, greet me by name. Mrs. Begay even lowered my rent after I fixed her ancient washing machine, quieting the rhythmic thumping that had been my nightly soundtrack. I check every letter that passes through my hands, though. Every single one. Elmer and I developed a new system. The nameless letters still arrive, about one per month. When they do, we follow the rules meticulously. I wear gloves. I never look directly at them after sunset. We place them in the red box before midnight. The scratching still comes from inside the wall sometimes, but it's fainter now, almost routine. Thomas visits occasionally, checking the protections he placed around the post office. He says the boundary between worlds has stabilized, that the debt is being properly managed. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I trust him. I looked into Jennifer Sandoval's family after that night. There was never any lawsuit. That was a fiction created by my guilt, reinforced by the entity that wanted to replace me. Miguel Sandoval had indeed moved on, remarried last spring. His son is thriving in school. They live in peace, without the burning hatred I'd imagined they felt toward me. As for regional manager Arnold Whitfield, he took early retirement shortly after my encounter with the nameless letters. Elmer says that's a good sign, the network of replaced individuals responding to the loss of a potential new host. I still check the eyes of my supervisors when they visit, though, just to be sure. I've started therapy, finally talking through the accident and its aftermath with a counselor in Gallup who specializes in trauma. I don't tell her about paper demons or rules written on post-it notes, of course. Some truths aren't meant for everyone. Last week, I found a blue envelope in my personal mailbox. No return address, but a real stamp and my name written in elegant cursive. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought it was happening again. But when I carefully opened it, wearing gloves just in case, it contained only a handwritten note from Emily, my ex-wife. She'd heard about my accident at work. The official story involved a gas leak and explosion, and wanted to check that I was okay. She included her new phone number. I haven't called her yet. Some chapters are better left closed. Sometimes at night, I dream of cream-colored envelopes and rust-colored spiral symbols. I dream of Jennifer Sandoval walking toward me, her form shifting and changing. But these aren't nightmares anymore, just processing. My mind filing away the extraordinary events into categories it can understand. The rules are pinned to my refrigerator now. All 11 of them, plus a few more Elmer and I have added based on experience. I read them each morning before work, a reminder that the world is stranger and more dangerous than most people realize, but also more forgiving than I had believed possible. Tonight, as I write this final entry in my journal, I can see the silhouette of Window Rock against the moonlit sky through my apartment window. The formation stands guard as it has for centuries, a silent witness to countless stories, including mine. Tomorrow, I'll deliver the mail as usual. I'll check for return addresses. I'll wear gloves when handling suspicious envelopes. And I'll follow the rules. All of them. Because some letters aren't meant to be delivered, and some are never meant to be opened.